Hello and welcome to this launch webinar for the Knowledge Hubs and the Teacher Regional Improvement Projects. Let's have a look at what we're going to cover today. We're going to start with an introduction to the T-Level Professional Development offer. And then we're going to look in some depth at strand 4 of that offer, which is Knowledge Hubs and the Teacher Regional Improvement Projects. 3, we're going to look at understanding those projects in more detail, the kinds of things that we're looking for. 4, we're going to look at the application process to make sure that you have everything that you need to make a successful application. And 5, any questions. Feel free as we go through to add any questions in the chat box. We'll try to answer some of these as we'll go through, and we'll surface some of the answers at relevant points through the presentation. So firstly, an introduction to the offer. So the T-Level Professional Development offer is delivered by the Education and Training Foundation and funded by the Department for Education. A little bit more on the Education and Training Foundation themselves. The Education and Training Foundation work with teachers, trainers, leaders and employers to help them deliver excellent technical vocational education and training. They focus on 2 long-term strategic goals: a strong, resilient and responsive FE and training system in England, and a highly professional teaching and training workforce recognised as consistently good to outstanding by international standards. The Foundation is sector-owned and sector-led, and they lead quality improvement in further education and training. They work across all post-16 education and training settings, and they achieve change through high-quality professional development for teachers, trainers, assessors, leaders and governors. They are not-for-profit and backed by governments. Much of their offer is free or subsidised, and this TLPD offer is 100% fully funded, so there is no charge. So let's have a look at that offer in some more detail. There are 5 key strands here, each represented by a different colour. So let's start at the top. The ongoing needs analysis. That's to help providers identify what the challenges are in T-level delivery and to support the first providers to deliver, to self-assess and write professional development plans. Then down the bottom, understanding T-levels. This strand will provide information about T-levels to staff in a range of different job roles to explain what the impact of T-levels will be across organisation. On this side, what's called the PPP programme. This strand is the largest and probably the most important strand. It focuses on improving teaching. So it focuses on pedagogy, so core teaching skills and methods, practice, subject knowledge and subject-specific training, and professional knowledge, industrial and employability understanding for teachers. In the middle here, we have the Knowledge Hubs, the CPD and the Networks, and the Teacher Regional Improvement Projects, and the Industrial Insight activity as well. We'll cover that in a bit more depth. That's strand 4, and that's our strand. And then over here on the 5th strand, the organisational readiness strand will support middle managers to ensure that they can ensure that learning is embedded and their teams are supported effectively through change. So as you can see, there's a really rich offer that's been put together by the Foundation and funded by the department to help support T-level delivery, both for those providers that are delivering in 2020 and those providers that are perhaps looking to deliver in 2021 and beyond. Why have we covered the full depth of this offer before we start going on to talking about the Knowledge Hubs and the Teacher Regional Improvement Projects? Well, firstly, I think it's important to help you understand how the Knowledge Hubs and those Teacher Regional Improvement Projects fit into the broader TLPD offer, but also, secondly, providers that are members or participants in Teacher Regional Improvement Projects will be able to get funding to attend some of these other strands. So specifically, the teacher development available through the PPP programme, the awareness raising through this strand here, and the management support through strand 5, and the CPD through strand 4. So if you're looking to access remission funding, you must be a member of a TRIP, and the remission funding will help you access the breadth of this offer. So it's important to understand what that offer contains.
And now let's look at strand 4 in more depth. There are 3 main work streams within strand 4. 1. CPD and Networks, 2. Teacher Regional Improvement Projects, and 3. Industry Insight. Now we're going to cover the teacher regional improvement projects more shortly, so let's focus on 1, CPD and Networks, and 3, Industry Insights. Now, there's a range of delivery partners as part of this offer who provide this support. So you can see for your provider, if you look at the region down the left-hand side and the type of support along the top, which providers are providing certain types of support for you. So let's start with CPD and Networks. The idea of these CPD and networks is to maximise the impact of CPD offered in other strands by providing opportunities for peer-to-peer collaboration and technical workforce development support. Each regional knowledge hub will deliver networks and route, pathway and subject specialist activities across their area. We will utilise existing networks to offer support based on general T-level themes and route, pathway and subject specialist themes. All 3 knowledge hubs, which you can see there on the right on the map, will jointly deliver a national cluster group which will enable cross-regional collaboration and act as a vehicle for DFE, ETF and other stakeholders to facilitate two-way exchange and consultation with the sector, aiding the development of the support offer overall, ensuring reach, engagement and effective delivery. A key element about the CPD and the networks is that they are provider-led and driven. So this strand of activity gives the opportunity for you to set your own CPD priorities and what are the areas that you're most interested in focusing on with T-level development. So that's CPD and networks. What about industry insights? So 3 main types of activity that will be happening within this work stream. Teacher and trainer work placements, employer-led practice and development and advice and guidance workshops, and practice sharing and development workshops. Now there's 3 different levels of intensity for these employment placements. At the shortest, a work shadow can last between half to a whole day and just includes observation, whereas the longest, the staff placement in industry, lasts between 3 and 10 days and is an immersive experience linking observation, interaction and practical experience. In practice, how this differs. So a work shadow would involve observing industry colleagues in their day-to-day role, gaining an understanding of the workplace, and getting a better understanding of how to support the learner within the classroom. Whereas a staff placement in industry would involve observations and interactions in the work environment that applies to the sector pathway role, and an opportunity to experience working in a specific role with a company to gain a clearer insight of how it impacts blended learning in the classroom and the workplace. And importantly, for all of this activity, remission funding is available. There are further details for all the delivery partners that we've mentioned in this presentation that will be delivered outside of this presentation, which you can access and speak to the relevant delivery partner for your region. And here's a little bit more about the staff placement in industry, showing how the deeper, longer staff placement in industry can add value to both your teachers and your provider more generally. So we've talked now about the other 2 elements of Strand 4, the CPD and networks and the industry insight activity. Let's dive in and have a look at these teacher regional improvement projects, which I suspect may be the reason that most of you are here, trying to understand what's involved and how you can get access to the funding. Okay, so the Knowledge Hub lead delivery partners will manage the teacher regional improvement projects. So that's AOC in the north, the Skills and Education Group in the Midlands and London, and Creative Education and FE Sussex in the southeast and southwest. Lots of the times when you see the word teacher regional improvement projects, because it's a bit of a mouthful, you'll see that just abbreviated as here to TRIPS. So TRIPS are collaborative projects designed to improve the quality of technical teaching, learning and assessment in a diverse range of settings. The focus of the collaborative projects will be to improve technical teaching practice in preparation for T-levels. Projects may wish to focus on some of the following themes, and there's 7 themes set there. But I think the important thing to emphasise is that the theme and the focus of the project is up to you. It needs to be within scope, it needs to focus on technical teaching with a view to preparation for T-levels in the long term, but that actual title, that focus of the project is up to you. There are some ideas included here for you to help get you started, some broad themes, but it's important that focus of the project comes from you and it's something that matters to you and is important to you. So what kind of proposals are we looking for? Well, trips should be based on the Education and Training Foundation's Outstanding Teaching, Learning and Assessment project model. And again, you'll see that abbreviated to OTLA throughout this presentation. So what is the OTLA model? Well, it's very simple really. It's just that there is an overall focus on improving the outcomes for learners. Everything you do within the context of your trip must have a focus on outcomes for learners. So even if, for example, you're delivering a project around staff upskilling in preparation for T-levels, you've got to be able to track that back to the impact on learners. Secondly, that there's collaboration within and across providers. Each teacher regional improvement project must have 4 providers within the consortium, and one of those providers must be a 2020 provider. Now, that element of collaboration isn't optional. That's a requirement of the grant and the funding. The funding, as you'll see in the application, is also set so that that funding is fair between the individual providers. We found in previous rounds of commissioning projects along similar basis to these that collaboration is really important, and it's really important to be done in a meaningful way. Third, activity is research informed and draws on the appropriate expertise. Yes, it needs to be research informed and evidence informed. So evidence can be beyond simple educational research, but we need to have a strong rationale for why you think your project is going to work. Why will that approach that you want to try be effective? Now, you can't know for sure. Ultimately, we're trying to innovate here with new ideas and new approaches. If it was completely 100% confirmed that you would be able to get that result from what you were doing, it wouldn't be innovative. But it's got to be research informed, and we've got to have a strong rationale why it's an interesting approach that's worth trying out. Fourthly, it takes place over a sustained period of time. So these projects have to complete by the end of February. All of these projects will take place over a sustained period of time, but something like a single event would be out of scope for funding such as this. And lastly, the activity is evaluated to assess the impact on learners. Now, of course, we hope that these projects, each project that's commissioned, will have a meaningful impact on learners. But the most important thing is to be able to say whether it has or whether it hasn't. The worst thing would be actually spending all that money and time and all of your effort to get to the end of the project, only not to be able to say whether what you did have made a difference or not. Ultimately, these projects will help providers prepare for T-levels, whether they're current 2020 providers or providers that are looking to deliver T-levels in further rounds. So what we're trying to create through these projects is a booklet of ideas and approaches that takes some of the bigger challenges that providers are facing when trying to deliver T-levels and provides some solutions that providers have developed themselves that may or may not be effective. So we have here a slide that just helps you cross-check, or check yourself, I suppose, as you're coming up with those ideas. What are the characteristics of successful projects that we might be looking for? So firstly, innovative. Now, it doesn't have to be bleeding edge new, but it has to be at least new to you. It has to be something you wouldn't be doing naturally anyway. We don't want to fund existing work. Is it evidence-based? Going back to that previous slide, do you have a strong rationale for why you think your approach will work and why it's worth funding? Sustainable. We're looking for approaches that won't just last for the duration of the grant and the funding period. We're looking at approaches that can last, and the impact of those can persist across a number of cohorts of students. And lastly, transferable. If the logic of this is to create ideas and approaches that other providers can take and look at and think, oh well maybe I'll try that, or maybe I'll give this a go, it's got to be able, at least the principles of what you're doing, to be transferred to other providers. If it's so specific that actually nobody apart from you could possibly get any benefit from it, then it's probably out of scope. And lastly, collaborative. I know we talked about that on the previous slide, but the fact that the projects are collaborative is not optional. You have to have 4 providers rather, as part of your consortium. Now, it's important to note that these projects in this OTLA style have a different ethos to some other programs. So in lots of CPD style programs, you'll have an organization that decides what the challenge is, they identify the solution, and they deliver the support, and then it's up to you whether you take that support up or not. These collaborative projects can be really powerful because they adopt a different model. You start in partnerships, and you group together with other relevant providers. You decide what the challenges are that you're facing. What are the most important things that you need to address? You then go and identify solutions to those challenges using the skills and the expertise of your teaching body, and then support from the delivery partner as well. And then you go ahead and deliver the project. We found through previous cycles of collaborative projects that this approach can be really effective, and particularly when you're focusing on things that really matter to you as an organisation. So, down to the numbers. So we will be issuing £45,000 awarded to 50 collaborative trips across England. Each trip must, as I said, involve a minimum of 4 organisations, one of which must be a 2020 T-level provider. One organisation must be appointed as the project lead. Now, in this round of commissioning, we're going to be awarding 30 of those collaborative trips, 10 for each regional knowledge hub. So that's 10 in the southeast and southwest, 10 in the Midlands and London, and 10 in the north. Of that 45,000, £25,000 of that funding will be allocated to trip participants to access remission funding to allow them to participate in the wider T-level professional development support offer available through strands 2, 3, 4 and 5. So only providers who participate in trips will be able to access remission funds. So that's why at the beginning of this presentation we try to lay out something of the breadth of the offer, because in addition to gaining that essentially £20,000 which can fund your staff time within your organisation working on your project, you're also getting access to a further £25,000 which you can use to upskill your staff in the very different elements of this T-level professional development support offer. So as I said, the trips will involve a minimum of 4 providers working in a range of settings. So there is a preference here for diverse partnerships. And again, that goes back to the transferability. You know, if you try the same approach with 4 very similar providers, then it might be possible to say, well, actually, maybe that won't work in my setting, or how would that be different for me as a certain type of college, for example, or a certain type of provider. The idea of having mixed partnerships is you can explore through the delivery of the project how the approaches that you're taking differ for different types of providers in different contexts. Of those 4 providers, as we said, one must be a 2020 T-level provider, and your local delivery partner, your local knowledge hub, will be able to support you secure a 2020 provider if you don't have access to one at the moment. One organisation must act as the project lead, and contracts will be awarded to that organisation. So one thing to note about the 2020 providers is they don't have to lead the trip, they just have to be a participant in it. As an organisation, you can only apply to lead one trip, but you can be involved in as many as you like. And if you are involved in multiple research projects, you just need to make sure that the activity involved in those projects is clearly different. So this is an online presentation where we've been running these face-to-face. We'd encourage providers to think about some of the challenges that they may face with T-level delivery, because of course this is open for current 2020 providers all the way through to providers who plan to deliver T-levels in the future. But starting to think about what the key challenges are around T-level delivery and improving the quality of vocational teaching generally. We find that starting with a challenge or an issue can be a great way of thinking about what your project ideas can be. So you can adopt a similar approach here. If you get a sheet of A4 paper and just write a 3x3 grid out on it with challenges in the middle, then you can start to come up with your colleagues ideas about what you think the key challenges might be, and which areas that you might be able to sort of usefully explore as part of your project. And then you can take a very similar, once you've found your challenge that you want to look at, you can often in fact write it in the center square and write potential solutions for that challenge, that particular issue, around on the outside. Now this is just a very simple brainstorming technique. Obviously people have their own preferences for how they do it, but that general principle of starting with challenges and thinking about solutions and making sure those challenges are things that matter to you, we found to be very useful, and we'd recommend. Now all three delivery partners have various different mechanisms to hook you up with partners if you're in need of partners, and for you to see what are the other kinds of projects that other people might be interested in. So you don't have to come up with all the ideas yourself. You can be a group member of another group where a provider's already got a clear idea about what they want to do, and if you contact your local knowledge hub, your local delivery partner, they'll be able to sort you out with the details of relevant partners and relevant projects as well. Key thing here is the deadline. The deadline is 12 p.m. so that's midday, Friday the 24th of May 2019. Now, I haven't included the contact details for each of the three delivery partners. That's separate to this presentation, but you'll receive that also. There is full guidance and application forms available. Each of the three knowledge hubs is making that available to you in slightly different ways, but the guidance and the application forms are exactly the same. So I would recommend that you file this one under urgent. If you're thinking of applying, start thinking about this right now, because it can sometimes take a little while to get the relevant partners together. The application itself isn't very long, and it's not long on purpose to make it easy for you to put together a proposal quickly. But I would still encourage you to think about this right now. And if you have any questions, yes, feel free to ask your local delivery partner, your local knowledge hub, and we'll assist you in any way we can. And lastly, we're going to have a very quick look at the application process. I'm not going to go into this in great depth because there's a really useful application form and some good guidance that goes with that, which explains this in much better depth than I probably can right now. But let's just move forward. So the key things you'll need for your application, you need a partnership model. So who are the partners that are going to be a part of your bid? A project summary. Now, as you can see with all of these, we're not looking for lots and lots of words. So to try and make what you're writing clear. It's really helpful for particularly project summaries, but all throughout as well. If you can make it really clear what you will actually do as part of your project, that makes it much easier for us when we're evaluating different projects to try and work out which is the one that will deserve the funding. So project summary, that's a quick overview of what your project will do. Project approach, how will you do it? What methods will you use? What approach? Outcomes, impact and evaluation. What outcomes an impact are you expecting to see, and how will you evaluate your project so that you can determine whether those outcomes and whether that impact's been achieved. Equality and diversity. This is an important section, and it's scored equally to the other sections, so don't skip it or give it less concern than some of the other elements. It's not very long, but still, we've reviewed plenty of applications where equality and diversity hasn't been afforded the same level of care and thought as some of the other elements of the application. Project management and expertise. So managing a project, they can be incredibly powerful tools for improving providers and developing teachers, but they do take organising. So we want to understand exactly who you have, who will be managing the project, and the expertise of you as an organisation in terms of managing projects of this nature. And lastly, cost. How do you intend to spend the funding that's available to you? It's worth mentioning at this point that capital expenditure isn't permitted as part of this funding. So you need to make sure that, I mean, most of the funding is likely to go on teacher time, to be away from the classroom or the workshop in order to focus on the project. As I said, there's some very clear guidance and a very clear application form, hopefully, where you can get this information and more. We would definitely strongly encourage you to read that all through before you start making your proposal. Okay, so that's the end of the formal element of this presentation. I hope you found it useful. I hope it's given you a good introduction both to the broader TLPD offer and what we're looking for in terms of applications from these teacher regional improvement projects. If you have any questions, do ask them in the chat box now, and we'll endeavour to answer them right now. You'll, of course, feel free to email them after if you prefer. We'll be sending you an email after this webinar with details of all the different delivery partners for your various regions, and access to all of those documents so you can start working on your application as soon as you like.